Good morning. It's really great to be back here. I always love coming here. So I think you saw that my title is A New Way of Being. And I want to begin with a quote from Eric Butterworth, who was the late Eric Butterworth, who was a Unity minister, and I think in our time, the best New Thought teacher that I've ever read. And Eric wrote, Easter is a time to take a new look at ourselves and contemplate the divinity in us and the depths of our own God potential. It is a time to reappraise the principle that makes all overcoming possible. He's saying to us that each of us has that God potential within us right here and right now. And that's why in New Thought, we teach that Jesus was the great example rather than the great exception. And probably most of you have heard that, but kind of I'll review it. The reason we don't say Jesus was the great exception is because if we say that, all we could do is kind of stand back and look in wonder and awe at all he did and say, isn't that fabulous? But if we say Jesus was the great example, we can still look at the work that he did with awe and just appreciate it. But we can also say, I can do that or come close to it. I can live a Jesus-like life. And Meister Eckhart was a Christian mystic who lived from 1260 to 1328. And he wrote something very close to what Butterworth said, different words, but same meaning. Let me tell you what he wrote. He said, what good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son takes place unceasingly, but it does not take place within myself? He's saying that you and I are here to give birth to the Christ within. And to me, what that means is that we're really called to live a Christ-like life. Resurrection is about new beginnings. We die to one experience and we move and resurrect ourselves to a larger experience. And it's not necessarily a one-time event. When people experience a divorce, when people experience a job loss, when people become empty nesters, when people have someone that they love die, so often what happens is that person dies to an old identity and gives birth to a new one. So I want to give you an example of that comes from the book Guidance from the Darkness that was written by Reverend Mary Murray Shelton. And so let me read this to you. It's an amazing story. Dear friend, I found this beautiful magazine in a dirty, rundown motel room. When I went into that room, I was an alcoholic and an addict. When I left, I was a shining, clean, and free woman. I was free from my obsession for alcohol and drugs. I was free for the first time in many years. My life before this consisted of being locked up in hospital wards, jails, and prisons several dozen times. One by one, I gave away my 4 children. During one of my more desperate times of loneliness, I stole one of my children from her new mother. For this insanity, I was sent to prison for child stealing. I never knew what resentments were. What when what I felt was a deep hate for the whole world, but most of all for myself. I felt guilty too, and knew what it was like to be very lonely. The fears I had were many, and some were nameless. I made several attempts at suicide. This was my life until I found that beautiful Science of Mind magazine 2 years ago in that dirty little hotel room. I read the words that told me God's dwelling place is within man, that if I would still my thoughts, I could realize his presence. My friend, can you understand what those words meant to me when I had given up the desire to live? Those words made me realize that God and I had never been separated, that we would never be apart in this world or any other world. I felt fear leave me. What a great stillness surrounded me. A river of peace flowed through me, and streams of light broke through the darkness and shone through me. I was healed. That light has never left me, and each time I turn within God's presence, I find the light steady and undimmed by time. I know this light is the love that God has for man. The light has shone through to touch others, and they are now healed as I have been. It is beautiful to see the images of God emerge from a form that is shaking and afraid and sick from ignorance. Sometimes I think I hear a mighty celestial cheer from the teachers of truth from all ages as this miracle of God's light shines through the darkness to heal another and still another. May God bless you, my friend, and may he bless those wonderful people who wrote the words that started a chain of miracles. With love, Jane Doe. The Jane Doe that left that room was not the same Jane Doe that entered it. Easter is about freeing ourselves from limited living. It's about a whole new way of living and being. It's waking up to who we are and asking the questions, who am I and why am I here? So I want to share another example with you of resurrection. And it's about a lady named Megan McKenna. Megan is Catholic. Megan is a writer and a speaker, and she's a facilitator of workshops. I read about Megan in an article a few years ago where she was facilitating a book group, and at some point within the book group, somebody stood up and called out to her, "Have you ever brought someone back from the dead?" This is her response. Yes. Every time I bring hope into a situation, every time I bring joy where there is a shattered despair, every time I forgive others and give them back their dignity, every time I listen to others and affirm their life, every time I speak the truth, every time I fight injustice, yes, I bring people back from the dead. That is resurrection. And that is the kind of resurrection that we all can do, whether it's Jane Doe coming out of that hotel room, or whether it's Megan McKenna reaching out and helping people resurrect their lives. You and I can do that. You and I can resurrect our own lives if they need it, and you and I can be a conduit in other people resurrecting their lives. You know, Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living, wrote that you and I have built tombs for ourselves. He said we have bound ourselves by fear, by superstition, and unbelief. And he said, yet there is always this voice calling to us, arise, arise, and come forth. In the Science of Mind book, Ernest wrote this: no man ever walks life's road alone. There is ever another who walks with him. This is his inner self, the undying reality. We must not look afar to see the Christ, for he is ever near at hand, always within us. So I want to kind of do a little switch of topics for a minute, and then I'll come back to this. You know, in the Bible, we read about Jesus, and we read about Jesus' word on the cross. And the words on the cross, they've come to be known as the seven last words, or the seven last sayings. And most of you have heard them, but let me give you kind of a little review of some of them. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Today you shall be in paradise with me. I thirst. It is done. So those are a few. But I want to speak to you about a different word, which is also one of the seven. And this is what the Bible says Jesus said there. My God, why have you forsaken me? My God, why have you forsaken me? There are a lot of Bible scholars in today's world that think that that's not a good translation. In fact, many of them think it's a very poor translation. One expert that I read said, the Jesus I know would never have said that. So you can ask, what's a better translation? And here's what a lot of the scholars call a better translation. My God, it is for this purpose I have come. My God, it is for this purpose I have come. Big difference, huh? Isn't there a big difference? So what is the purpose? What's the purpose that Jesus came here for? And I think it's the same purpose that you and I are here for. And that is simply to recognize and actualize the divinity that is within each one of us and to live it. You know, when I was in the School of Ministry, I did a report on a rabbi named Abraham Joshua Heschel. And I want to read something that Rabbi Heschel wrote. He said, in the eyes of the world, I may be average, but in my own heart, I am of great moment. The challenge I face is how to actualize, how to concretize the quiet eminence of my own being. And to me, when I read that, when he speaks about to actualize the quiet eminence of his own being, I read that as to actualize and concretize the life within, the Christ within, and to actually step forward and live it. You and I can create the life that we choose to live. And so the true message of today is to roll away the stone of lack, to roll away the stone of limitation, to roll away the stone that says you can't live the dream you choose to live, to roll away the stone that says you're not enough, to roll away the stone that says you are not smart enough. That is what I believe is the purpose Jesus came for, and that's what I believe is the purpose that you and I are here for. You know, when Jesus was at his friend Lazarus's grave, he did not ask God to roll away the stone, because God doesn't do that. Maybe even God can't do that. That's your job, and that's my job, to roll away those stones. We need to roll away any of the obstacles that are barriers that keep us from having the life of spirit flow through us. And we can do that because, as Holmes reminded us, we never walk this path alone. No matter how difficult life gets, no matter how sad we may feel, no matter what is showing up in our life, we are never alone. Another walks with us, and that other is that divine presence, that Christ within us. So I want to share with you another quote. This one is from Albert Camus that kind of goes along exactly with what I just said. He said, "In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy. For it says, no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back." And you and I know that something stronger and something better is the Christ within. So a while back, I read an article by a married couple named Frederick and Mary Ann Broussat. And the article was about how we could practice resurrection in our daily lives. They listed 37 different ways. Now, I'm not going to do that. So I want to take you through 7 or 8 of those ways. And some of them are going to be a little repetitive to what I said, but it's okay, I think. The first one they said is we can open our heart, our mind, and our soul to the pain in the world. I want to stop there for a minute. We can open up our heart, our mind, and our soul to the pain in the world. And we all know right now in the world and in this country, there is a lot of pain. People are hurting. No matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, people are hurting. And they're telling us we can open our heart to it. We cannot turn away from it. We can be the spiritual guides that open ourselves to that. They also said we can live in the present moment where God is. We can pray for other people. They said when you forgive, a resurrection is in the making. Sounds familiar, right? When you bring hope to someone in despair, a resurrection is in the making. When you bring joy to those around you, a resurrection is in the making. When you work for justice, freedom, and equality, a resurrection is in the making. I'm going to read that one again. When you work for justice, freedom, and equality, a resurrection is in the making. And when you give voice to your inner workings and desires, a resurrection is in the making. Those are things we can all do. You know, nobody is asking us to walk on water. Nobody is asking us to turn water into wine. Nobody is asking us to make a blind man see. All we are asked to do is to be kind, to be loving, to be compassionate, to not just be human, but to be humane. We all can do that. It's not too much. It's not a big job. You don't have to be a minister. You don't have to be a practitioner. You just have to care. I want to close with a word from somebody who is a mystic in our time, who wrote The Moments of High Resolve. Keep fresh before me the moments of high resolve. Despite the dullness and barrenness of the days that pass, if I search with due diligence, I can always find a deposit left by some former radiance. But I had forgotten. At the time, it was full-orbed, glorious and resplendent. I was sure that I would never forget. In the moment of its fullness, I was sure that it would illuminate my path for the rest of my journey. I had forgotten how easy it is to forget. There was no intent to betray what seemed so sure at the time. My response was whole, clean, authentic. But little by little, there crept into my life the dust and grit of the journey. Details, lower level demands, all kinds of cross currents. Nothing momentous, nothing overwhelming, nothing flagrant. If there just wear and tear, if there had been some direct challenge, a clear-cut issue, I would have fought it to the end and beyond. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of God, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in fair weather and in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and foe are nameless or familiar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. God bless you. Happy Easter, and I'll see you again in a moment.